Emery, stop acting like this is a big deal. It's just babysitting. Diane said it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, like I was being unreasonable for hesitating. Around her, everyone kept moving, Olivia gathering her kids, Ethan avoiding my gaze like the decision had already been made for me. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was staring at the envelope in my hand. My name was there, Emery Castillo. But the address wasn't mine, and the seal had already been opened. "You read this?" I asked. Diane didn't even flinch. "It came here. We assumed it involved the family." I pulled the letter out. My stomach dropped. Primary caregiver agreement. My name, my signature, a contract I had never seen. "If you've ever been told something was your responsibility without your consent," I said, keeping my voice steady, "tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. And if you want to see how this unfolds, subscribe." I looked up at them. "You shouldn't have opened something addressed to me," I said. "Especially this." A week before Christmas, I was sitting at our kitchen island with my laptop open, trying to finish a compliance review before the end of the year. My job required precision policies, documentation risk flags. I spent my days identifying patterns other people overlooked. At home, though, I had been ignoring one for months. "Mom asked if you're free Christmas Eve," Ethan said, leaning against the counter like it was a casual question. I didn't look up. "Free for what?" He hesitated just long enough for me to notice. "Just helping out with the kids. Olivia wants to step out for a bit." "Helping out," I repeated quietly. "Or covering for everyone again." Ethan exhaled, already tired of the conversation. "It's not like that." "But it always was." "It started small after we got married. One dinner where I offered to watch the kids so everyone else could relax. Then it became expected. Then it became scheduled without me." Diane had a way of framing things that made refusal feel selfish. "We all do our part," she would say, smiling like it was a shared value instead of a quiet obligation she assigned. The problem wasn't babysitting. It was that I never got to choose. I finally looked up at Ethan. "Did she ask me? Or did she ask you?" He didn't answer right away. "That was my answer. She just wanted to make sure everything was covered," he said. "I told her you'd probably be okay with it." "Probably." I closed my laptop slowly. "You told her I'd do it." "I told her you'd help." He corrected, softer now. "It's Christmas, Emery. It's not worth making it into something bigger." That phrase again. Not worth it. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "When was the last time you said no to them?" He frowned. "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is me finding out my schedule from your mother." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "You know how she is." "Yes, I did." Diane didn't ask. She coordinated. She positioned things so saying no felt like breaking a system everyone else was already following. And Ethan, whether he realized it or not, kept that system running. Later that night, after he went to bed, I stayed in the kitchen longer than I needed to. My inbox was still open, and that's when I saw it. An email from Diane. Subject line, Christmas planning. It wasn't addressed just to me. It was a group email, Ethan, Olivia, even Richard. I opened it. "Hi, everyone. Just confirming that Emery will handle the kids' Christmas Eve so we can all relax and enjoy dinner. Thanks for being flexible as always, Emery." There it was. Not a question. A confirmation. A decision that had already been made and announced before I had even seen it. I read it twice, then a third time. My name sat in that sentence like it belonged there, like I had agreed, like I always did. I scrolled down. Ethan had replied earlier. "Sounds good. Thanks, Mom." That was it. No mention of asking me. No hesitation. Just approval. I felt something shift in my chest, not anger, not exactly. Something quieter. Colder. Clarity. This wasn't about one night. It was a pattern. A system I had allowed because it felt easier than disrupting it. Until now. I closed the email and locked my phone. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to respond immediately or explain myself. I just sat there thinking about how easily decisions were made in my name. about how often I adjusted to keep the peace, about how none of it had been written down. That last thought lingered longer than the others, because in my world, contracts, compliance, liability, nothing that mattered stayed unwritten. And yet somehow, my role in this family had been built entirely on assumptions. Until it wasn't. The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. "Hello. Hi, is this Emery Castillo?" A woman's voice asked, professional, precise. "Yes. I'm calling from Carter and Bloom Legal. We're reaching out regarding a caregiver agreement under your name. We just need to confirm a few details." I froze. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "What agreement?" There was a pause on the other end. "The primary caregiver agreement you signed earlier this year." My reflection in the mirror didn't look like me anymore. "I didn't sign anything like that," I said. Another pause. Longer this time. "Oh," she replied carefully. "Well, we do have documentation on file." My grip tightened around the phone. "Can you send me a copy?" "Of course," she said. "We'll forward it to the email we have on record." "What email is that?" She read it out. An address I hadn't used in over a year. An address I hadn't thought about. Until that exact moment. "I'll be waiting for it," I said quietly. When the call ended, I didn't move right away. I just stood there staring at my reflection again. A caregiver agreement, signed in my name, sent to an email I barely used anymore. And somehow, I already knew exactly which house it would be connected to. I didn't wait for the document to come through. I forwarded the number to my work phone and stepped into an empty conference room. The glass walls made everything feel exposed, but I preferred that to sitting alone with my thoughts. When you work in compliance, you learn one thing early. Don't assume, verify. The email arrived within minutes. Subject line, caregiver agreement, executed copy. I opened the attachment slowly, like the file might change if I rushed it. It didn't. The first page looked official enough, letterhead formatting, legal language written to sound clear but broad enough to stretch. I skimmed until I saw it. Primary caregiver Emery Castillo. My full name. Below that, terms. Long-term child care support for Olivia Grant's minor children. Availability during major holidays and designated family events. Primary point of responsibility in absence of biological parent. My stomach tightened. Then I saw the clause that made everything click. Failure to fulfill agreed obligations may result in financial penalties equivalent to allocated caregiver compensation. Compensation. I hadn't received a single dollar. I kept reading. There it was. An electronic signature. My name typed in a script font meant to imitate handwriting. And a timestamp. I checked the date again. I had been in Seattle that week. 3 days of back-to-back audit meetings. Flights, hotel receipts, calendar logs, everything documented. There was no way I signed this. Okay, I whispered to myself. So how does it look real? I scrolled down to the verification section. Signature authenticated via linked email confirmation. The email listed underneath made my chest go tight. It was the old account, the one I had stopped using. The one I had once shared access to briefly when Ethan helped me migrate files after we got married. I leaned back in my chair, the pieces lining up too quickly. I forwarded the file to Lena with a short message. "Can you look at metadata and signature validation?" She replied almost instantly. "Give me 10. I spent those 10 minutes going back through the document slower this time. There were small things, language that felt personal. References to family expectations, a clause about mutual understanding within the Castillo household. Not just legal, tailored, like someone had explained the situation to a lawyer in detail. My phone buzzed. "Lena, come upstairs," she texted. I grabbed my laptop and headed to her office. She had the document open along with a second window full of back-end data. "You're right to question this," she said without looking up. "It's clean on the surface, too clean." Meaning whoever did this knew exactly how these systems validate signatures. She pointed at the screen. "The authentication came through your old email. That part checks out. But I didn't approve anything." "I believe you," she said. "Look at the timestamp." I leaned in. See that she continued. It shows the confirmation link was clicked within minutes of being sent. So that's not how people behave when they're actually reviewing a contract. They open it, read it, hesitate. This was immediate. Like someone was waiting for the email. A script. A process. Not a decision. I felt my pulse steady, not spike. That was always the shift for me, the moment something moved from emotional to procedural. What about location data? I asked. Lena nodded. I checked the access logs tied to that email account. The IP address, at least for that confirmation, comes from a residential network. Where? She turned the screen slightly toward me. I didn't need her to say it. I recognized the provider, the region, the pattern. It was local, not Seattle, not anywhere near the conference center where I had spent that entire week. Can you narrow it down? I asked. Not exactly to a house without a warrant, she said. But I can tell you it's consistent with a home network. Not a corporate one. A home. I sat back slowly. Emery, Lena said carefully. Who had access to that email? I didn't answer right away. Because I already knew. Ethan had helped me reset that account last year. He had the password at least for a while. I never thought to change it after. Why would I? It was my husband. Someone close, I said finally. Lena studied me for a second, then nodded. You're going to need legal backup on this. This crosses from unethical into potentially criminal. I know. I closed my laptop. The room felt different now. Quieter. Sharper. What's your next move? She asked. I thought about the contract. The clauses. The penalties. The fact that this wasn't just about babysitting, it was structured, documented, enforceable. Designed. I need to see everything I said, not just this agreement. Then start with the sender, Lena replied. Who initiated it? I nodded. Back at my desk, I reopened the email from Carter and Bloom Legal. There was a contact signature at the bottom. A name. A direct line. I picked up the phone again and dialed. Carter and Bloom, this is Melissa. Hi, Melissa. This is Emery Castillo again. I reviewed the document you sent. Of course. Do you have questions? Yes, I said. I need to know who initiated this agreement. There was a pause. I'm not sure I can disclose. I cut in calm but firm. Because I'm telling you now that I did not authorize this contract. And if my identity was used without consent, that's not a family matter anymore. Silence, then a shift in her tone. Let me check the file, she said. I waited. I could hear her typing, scrolling, clicking. When she came back, her voice was more careful. The agreement was requested through a family consultation, she said. The primary contact listed is Diane Castillo. My grip tightened slightly. And secondary, I asked. Another pause. Ethan Castillo. There it was. Not a suspicion anymore. Not a theory. A record. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them again. Thank you, I said. That's all I needed. When I hung up, the room felt completely still. Not because nothing was happening, but because everything had just become clear. This wasn't pressure. This wasn't assumption. This was planned, documented, executed. And I hadn't even seen all of it yet. I didn't go home right away that evening. Instead, I sat in a small cafe across the street from my office with my laptop open and the contract pulled up again. The same document, the same signature, the same quiet violation just sitting there like it had always belonged to me. Lena slid into the seat across from me 10 minutes later, setting her coffee down without a word. You look like you already know the answer, she said. I confirmed who initiated it, I replied. Diane. And Ethan. She didn't react with surprise. Just a slow nod like it fit the pattern she had already seen. Okay, she said. Then now it's about proving intent. I turned the laptop toward her. I was in Seattle when this was signed, I said. I have flights, hotel records, meeting logs. That's good, she said. That challenges the validity of your signature. But it doesn't yet prove how they did it. I think it does, I said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. The confirmation email went to my old account, I continued. The one Ethan helped me access last year. I never changed the password after that. Lena leaned back, processing. So someone had both access and timing, she said.
Yes.
And knew you wouldn't check that inbox regularly.
Yes.
We sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of that settle. Then Lena leaned forward again. Pull up your travel records. I opened my calendar, then my expense app, then my email confirmations. It didn't take long to build the timeline. Departure flight Monday, 7:10 a.m. Hotel check-in Monday afternoon. Meetings Tuesday through Thursday, all logged and documented. Return flight Friday evening. The contract timestamp, Wednesday, 2:14 p.m. I zoomed in on my calendar. At that exact time, I had been sitting in a conference room with 8 other people presenting a risk assessment. There were slides, meeting minutes, even a recorded segment. There's no physical way I signed anything at that time, I said. Good, Lena replied. Now you're not just denying, you're disproving. I nodded, then pulled up the email header from the contract confirmation. Lena leaned in again, pointing at a string of numbers. Here she said, "This is the originating IP for the confirmation click. Can you match it?" "Not to a person," she said, "but we can get a general location." She typed quickly, ran the lookup, then turned the screen toward me. The location wasn't precise, but it didn't need to be. It was the same region as Diane and Richard's house. A residential network. Local. Not Seattle. Not a hotel. Not a corporate VPN. A home. My chest didn't tighten this time. It settled. Cold, clear, undeniable. They didn't just assume I'd say yes. I said slowly. They built something to make sure I couldn't say no. Lena didn't respond right away. "Emery," she said carefully, "this is bigger than overstepping. This is identity misuse, possibly fraud. I know. And if you push this, it won't stay inside the family. I know." That part didn't scare me the way it should have. What scared me was how easily it had happened, how normal it must have felt to them. I scrolled further down the document, past the signature, past the clauses, into the appendix section. I hadn't paid much attention to it before. Now I did. There were references, supporting documents, schedules, payment summaries. I clicked the first one. A spreadsheet opened, rows of dates, holiday blocks, estimated hours, and then a column labeled Allocated Compensation Caregiver E. Castillo. Numbers filled the cells, not small ones. Thousands, spread across months. I stared at it. "I haven't received any of this," I said. "Of course you haven't," Lena replied. "Because that's not the point." I looked at her. "The point," she continued, "is that on paper you have, which means that money went somewhere under your name." I felt something shift again, deeper this time. This wasn't just about control. It was about money. I clicked another document, a summary letter. Formal tone, clean formatting. Allocation structured to optimize tax efficiency under caregiver designation. I read that line twice, then a third time. "They used me to structure this," I said. Lena nodded. "Looks like it." If you're listed as the caregiver, certain payments or benefits can be categorized differently, meaning less tax liability, I said. "Exactly." I leaned back, the pieces locking into place faster than I could process them emotionally. They hadn't just assigned me responsibility. They had assigned me value, on paper, without telling me. "So if I don't comply," I said slowly. "You're in breach of contract," Lena finished. "At least according to this document." I closed the laptop halfway, then stopped. There was one more file, a PDF. Name supplemental agreement. Holiday coverage. I opened it. Shorter document, more specific. Primary caregiver agrees to be present and available during major holidays, including but not limited to Christmas Eve. My jaw tightened. This wasn't general. This was targeted, designed around moments like the one coming up, like the one they had already planned. "They locked this in," I said. "They made Christmas part of the contract." Lena didn't say anything. She didn't need to, because now I understood why Diane sounded so certain. Why Ethan didn't argue. Why Olivia never asked. It wasn't assumption anymore. It was enforcement. I slowly closed the laptop. "What are you going to do?" Lena asked. I thought about the envelope. The house. The way Diane had said family business like that explained everything. I thought about Ethan's silence, his involvement, his name on the file. I'm not going to react, I said finally. Lena tilted her head. No, I repeated. I'm going to prepare. Because reacting would give them time to adjust, to explain, to soften it. Preparation would do the opposite. It would make the truth land exactly as it was. Unavoidable. I picked up my phone and looked at the calendar. Christmas Eve. 7 days away. Just enough time. I stood up, sliding the laptop into my bag. They think this is already decided, I said. Lena gave a small knowing smile, and I met her eyes. I'm going to let them believe that. I didn't bring it up that night. Ethan was on the couch when I got home, half watching something, half scrolling on his phone. He looked up like everything was normal. Hey, he said. You're late. Work ran long, I replied, setting my bag down like nothing had shifted. He nodded, accepting that answer too easily. That was the pattern. As long as things stayed calm on the surface, he didn't look deeper. I moved through the kitchen quietly, reheating leftovers, letting the silence sit between us just long enough to feel intentional. Mom texted, he added casually. She wants to finalize plans for Christmas Eve. Of course she did. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. Finalize what? You know, dinner timing. Olivia might step out for a bit, so I'll handle the kids I finished for him. Ethan hesitated, just for a second. That's what we talked about. No, that's what they decided. I walked back into the living room slowly and sat across from him. Ethan, I said, keeping my voice even. When did you talk to your mom about me being available? He shifted slightly. A few days ago. Before or after she sent that group email confirming it. He didn't answer. I held his gaze. Because I read it. It didn't sound like a question. He exhaled, setting his phone down. Emery, it's not that serious. She just likes to organize things early. She organized my time without asking me. She assumed you'd be okay with it. No, I said quietly. You assumed that. That landed. He looked away first. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I leaned forward slightly. Let me ask you something else, I said. Do you remember helping me reset my old email account last year? His shoulders tensed. Just a little. Yeah, he said. Why? I got a call today, I continued. From a law office. Now he was looking at me again. They said I signed something, I said. A caregiver agreement. His expression didn't change fast enough. Not shock. Not confusion. Recognition. He tried to cover it, but I saw it. I don't know anything about that, he said too quickly. I didn't respond right away. I just watched him. Really, I asked. Yeah, he said more firmly this time. I mean, maybe it's some kind of mix-up. A mix-up. Right. I nodded slowly like I was considering it. That's possible, I said, except they sent me the document. That pause again. Longer this time. What document, he asked. I let the silence stretch before answering. A contract, I said, with my name on it. My signature. Ethan swallowed, subtle but visible. That's weird, he said. But it doesn't mean anything. It means something, I replied. Because there's a clause about financial penalties if I don't fulfill my caregiver obligations. He blinked. That caught him off guard. Penalties, he repeated. Yes, that doesn't sound right, he said quickly. Why would there be penalties? Good question. I tilted my head slightly. That's what I'm trying to figure out. He leaned back, rubbing his hands together like he needed something to do with them. Look, Emery, he said, softer now. Even if something was signed, it's probably just paperwork. My mom likes things to be official. Official. That's one word for it, I said. He let out a small breath, trying to reset the tone. Can we not turn this into something bigger than it is, he asked. It's just helping out with the kids. There it was again. I stood up slowly. Is it? I asked. He looked up at me confused. Because from where I'm standing, I continued. It looks like someone created a legal agreement in my name without telling me. That's not what happened, he said immediately. Then what did happen? He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away, and that silence, that was louder than anything he could have said. I let it sit there between us. Then I picked up my bag again. I'm going to shower, I said. Emery, I'm not arguing with you tonight. I cut in calm but final. He didn't follow me. Of course he didn't, because if he did, he'd have to explain. And right now, he didn't have one that would hold up. Later, standing under the hot water, I replayed every second of that conversation. Not what he said, what he didn't say. No denial that made sense. No confusion. No anger. Just deflection. And one detail that stuck with me more than anything else. He hadn't asked to see the contract. Not once. Not even out of curiosity. Because he already knew what was in it. The next morning I woke up before him, sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and started pulling everything together. The contract, the email logs, the travel records, the IP data Lena helped me extract. I organized it the way I would for any internal case review. Clean, chronological, impossible to argue with. Then I created one more folder, label financials, because Ethan had said something the night before. Something small, but wrong. Even if something was signed, it's probably just paperwork. No, paperwork doesn't include penalties. Paperwork doesn't assign value. Paperwork doesn't move money. If there was a contract, there was a reason behind it. And I was done guessing. By noon, I had enough to know one thing for sure. This wasn't about babysitting. It never had been. And whatever they thought I'd quietly accept on Christmas Eve, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. By the next morning, I wasn't guessing anymore, I was verifying. I took a personal day and drove straight to Carter and Bloom Legal. I didn't tell Ethan. I didn't tell anyone. If there was a paper trail, I wanted to see it in person. The office sat on the third floor of a quiet building downtown. Neutral colors, frosted glass. Everything designed to feel controlled and professional. I checked in under my own name. Emery Castillo, I said. The receptionist glanced at her screen, then nodded. We've been expecting you. Ms. Reed can meet with you shortly. Expecting me? Of course they were. A few minutes later, a woman in her early 40s stepped out holding a slim folder. Ms. Castillo. I'm Melissa Reed, she said, offering a polite smile. Thank you for coming in. We sat across from each other in a conference room that felt too quiet for what I was about to ask. I'll be direct, I said. I did not authorize the caregiver agreement under my name. Her expression didn't change dramatically, but it sharpened. I understand, she said carefully. That's why we're reviewing the file. Then I need to see everything tied to it, I replied. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then opened the folder. Here's what we have on record, she said, sliding documents toward me. I recognized the contract immediately, but this time there was more. A cover sheet, a consultation summary, internal notes. I scanned quickly, my eyes catching phrases that mattered. Family structuring discussion, tax efficiency under caregiver designation, primary caregiver non-parent. I looked up. Explain this to me in plain terms. Melissa folded her hands. In certain situations, assigning a non-parent as a primary caregiver can allow for different financial classifications, stipends, reimbursements, and in some cases, tax advantages. So they listed me. I said to reduce their tax burden. That appears to be part of the strategy, yes. And the compensation listed under my name, she glanced at the document. Allocated caregiver compensation. It doesn't necessarily mean funds were paid directly to you. It can be distributed within the family structure. Distributed how I asked. Another pause. Typically to the parent, she said. In this case, Olivia Grant. There it was. Clean. Simple. They used my name. To move money. And I never saw a cent. I leaned back, letting that settle. And the penalties, I asked. Those are enforcement clauses, Melissa explained. They create a formal obligation. Without them, the agreement has less legal weight. So if I refuse to babysit, I said, slowly, this contract makes it look like I'm violating a paid agreement. Yes. And someone could attempt to claim damages. Yes. I let out a quiet breath. Not shock anymore. Just confirmation. And the signature, I asked. Melissa slid another page toward me. Electronic authentication log, she said. I read it line by line. Email sent. Link accessed. Confirmation completed. Timestamp. IP data. All recorded. all structured to look legitimate. Do you verify identity beyond email confirmation? I asked. In most cases, email authentication is considered sufficient, she said. Unless there's a dispute. There is one now, I replied. She nodded once. I understand. I tapped the page lightly. This was accessed from a residential IP, not mine. She didn't argue. Then that would be part of your challenge to the agreement, she said. Not just a challenge, I corrected. A dispute of authorization. That shifted the tone slightly, because those words mattered. Authorization, consent, legal responsibility. I need to ask you something else, I said. Of course. When this agreement was created, who provided my information? Melissa checked the notes again. The primary contact was Diane Castillo, she said. She provided household details, schedules, and general arrangement terms. And my personal data submitted as part of the caregiver designation, she replied. I held her gaze. Did you ever speak to me? No. Did you ever confirm my consent? She didn't answer immediately. No, she said finally. That was enough. I closed the folder slowly. What happens if I formally dispute this? I asked. Melissa's tone became more precise. The agreement could be voided if unauthorized use of identity is established, she said. However, it may also trigger further review, potentially involving liability for the parties who submitted the information, meaning Diane and Ethan. Yes, and possibly others involved in benefiting from the structure. Olivia. I nodded once. And if I don't dispute it, then the agreement stands, she said, including any obligations and enforcement clauses. So those were the options. Stay quiet and be legally tied to something I never agreed to. Or speak up and expose everything. I stood up. I'll be disputing it, I said. Melissa nodded. We can begin that process today. Not yet, I replied. She looked slightly surprised. You'd like to wait? Yes, because this wasn't just about voiding a contract. It was about timing, about context, about making sure the truth landed where it couldn't be ignored or rewritten. I'll contact you when I'm ready to proceed, I said. She handed me a copy of the full file. Take your time, but I would advise not delaying too long. I won't, I said. As I walked out of the office, the folder felt heavier than it should have. Not because of the paper, because of what it represented. Planning, coordination. A system built around my name without my knowledge. By the time I got back to my car, I already knew what I was going to do. I wasn't going to argue with them in private. I wasn't going to give them space to explain. I was going to let them walk into Christmas Eve exactly the way they had planned. Confident, certain, unprepared. And then I would hand them something they hadn't accounted for. Something official, something documented, something they couldn't dismiss as just family. I placed the folder on the passenger seat and started the engine. 7 days. That's all I needed. I didn't tell anyone what I found. Not Ethan, not Diane, not Olivia. I showed up to everything that week exactly the way they expected me to: calm, cooperative, available. That was the easiest part. On Tuesday, Diane called while I was at work. Just checking in, sweetheart, she said, her voice warm in that practiced way. We're all set for Christmas Eve, right? I leaned back in my chair, looking at the spreadsheet open on my screen, my own version this time. Clean columns, verified timestamps, evidence lined up like it was waiting to be presented. Yes, I said. I'll be there. There was a brief pause, like she was confirming she heard me correctly. Good, she replied. I knew I could count on you. Count on me. I almost smiled. Of course, I said. After we hung up, I added one more note to my file. Call log, time, duration. Not because I needed it, because I wanted everything documented. That night, Ethan tried again. We were in the kitchen moving around each other like nothing had changed. He watched me for a moment before speaking. You've been quiet, he said. I've been busy, I replied. With work? With things that needed attention. He nodded slowly, uncertain. About what we talked about. We didn't talk, I said calmly. You avoided. I listened. That landed harder than I expected. He looked down at this counter. I didn't mean for it to turn into this. Then what did you mean? I asked. He didn't answer. And again, that silence told me everything. I didn't push further. Not yet. because pushing now would give him time to prepare. I wasn't interested in that. The next day, I met Daniel Harper at his office. He reviewed everything I had compiled: contracts, logs, travel records, email headers, the consultation notes from Carter and Bloom. He didn't interrupt while reading. Didn't rush. When he finished, he closed the folder and looked at me. "This is solid," he said. "I need it to be more than solid," I replied. "I need it to be undeniable." He gave a small nod. "It already is. The question is how you want to use it." "I want to protect myself," I said, "and I want to make sure this doesn't happen again." "That means two things," he said. One, formally disputing the agreement. Two, putting the involved parties on notice. Notice, I repeated. Yes. A written document stating that your identity was used without authorization, that you reject the agreement, and that any further use will trigger legal action. I held his gaze. "Can it be delivered in person?" He paused. Then he understood. "Yes," he said. "It can." "Good." He turned his laptop toward me. "We'll draft it carefully, clear language, no emotion, just facts." That was exactly what I wanted. No arguments, no debates, just truth. We spent the next hour building it, line by line. Unauthorized use of identity, invalid execution of contract, immediate cessation of representation, reservation of rights to pursue legal remedies. Each sentence was precise, measured, final. When we were done, Daniel printed 3 copies. One for me, one for their records, one for the firm. "You don't have to deliver this yourself," he said. "We can send it formally." "I know," I replied. "But you want to." "Yes." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Then timing matters," he said. "Make sure it's delivered in a setting where it can't be ignored." I thought about Diane's living room, the dinner table, the way everyone gathered, the way decisions were always made in front of each other so no one had to take full responsibility. "That won't be a problem," I said. On Friday, I made one more call. "Carter and Bloom. This is Emery Castillo," I said. "I'd like to proceed with a formal dispute, but I'll be delivering notice in person first." "Understood," Melissa replied. "We'll hold the filing until we receive confirmation from you." "Thank you." By Saturday, everything was ready. The documents were printed, signed, organized. I placed them in a simple envelope. No labels, no markings, just clean white paper inside. That night, Ethan tried one last time. "Are we okay?" he asked quietly. I looked at him for a long moment. That question, simple on the surface, carried everything underneath it. Trust, respect, choice. "No," I said honestly. "But we will be." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means the truth is going to come out," I said. "And then we'll see what's left." He didn't ask anything else after that. He didn't need to, because something in my tone told him this wasn't another conversation he could avoid. Sunday came faster than I expected. Christmas Eve. I got dressed slowly, deliberately. Nothing dramatic, nothing different from what I would normally wear. That was the point. Everything about me looked the same, except it wasn't. I picked up the envelope before leaving. Light, simple, final. As I stepped out the door, my phone buzzed. A message from Diane. "Can't wait to see you tonight. The kids are so excited." I stared at it for a second. Then I locked my phone and put it away. Because tonight wasn't about excitement. It was about clarity. And for the first time since all of this started, I wasn't walking into their house as the person they expected me to be. I was walking in with proof. By the time we pulled into Diane and Richard's driveway, the house was already glowing. Lights along the roof. Music faintly spilling out every time the front door opened. Through the windows, I could see movement people plates, the familiar rhythm of a gathering that looked warm from the outside. Ethan killed the engine and glanced at me. "You okay?" he asked. I adjusted my coat, the envelope tucked neatly inside my bag. "I'm fine," I said. That wasn't a lie. I felt steady. Not calm in the way people expect. Not relaxed. Controlled. We stepped inside and the noise wrapped around us instantly. Emery, Diane called from across the room, her smile wide arms already open like nothing had ever been out of place. I let her hug me. It was brief, polite, Her perfume was the same as always, soft, expensive, carefully chosen. "Everything's almost ready," she said. "We're so glad you're here." "Of course you are." Olivia appeared behind her, juggling a glass of wine and a conversation at the same time. "Hey," she said quickly. "The kids are finishing up in the living room. I might step out later just for a bit." "Not a question. A schedule." "I'll check in with them," I replied. She smiled, relieved. "Perfect." Ethan moved toward his dad, already pulled into a conversation about something safe sports work, anything that didn't require him to look at me for too long. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. Same house, same roles, same assumptions. Except now, I could see the structure underneath it. The way Diane positioned herself at the center. The way Olivia deferred when it was convenient. The way Ethan blended into the background when things got complicated. And me, always placed where I was most useful. I walked into the living room. The kids were on the floor, surrounded by toys and wrapping paper they had already torn into early. "Hey," I said, kneeling down. "Having fun." They nodded, barely looking up. Good. They weren't part of this. They never were. I stayed with them for a few minutes, just enough to make everything look normal. Then I stood and walked back toward the dining area. Dinner started the way it always did. Dishes passed around. Small talk. Laughter that didn't quite reach everyone at the table. Diane sat at the head, guiding the flow without making it obvious. So she said at one point, glancing at me, "We're all set for tonight, right?" There it was. Subtle. Public. Framed as confirmation. I set my fork down. "What do you mean?" I asked, even though I already knew. "For the kids," she said smoothly. "After dinner. Olivia has something to take care of." Olivia nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Just for a couple of hours." I looked between them, then at Ethan. He didn't say anything. Of course he didn't. I felt the envelope in my bag without touching it. "Not yet." "Did something change?" Diane asked, her tone shifting just slightly. "You seemed fine about it earlier this week." I held her gaze. "I said I'd be here," I replied. She smiled again, reassured. "Yes, and we appreciate that. It means a lot to the family." The word family landed exactly the way she intended it to. Pressure disguised as belonging. I nodded once. "I understand," I said. Conversation moved on. Plates were cleared. Glasses refilled. Everything continued like a script everyone already knew, until Olivia stood up. "Okay," she said, lightly grabbing her coat. "I'm going to head out for a bit. The kids are all yours." She said it to the room, but she meant it for me. I didn't respond right away. I watched her reach for her keys, watched Diane glance at me waiting, watched Ethan stay quiet. That was the moment, the exact one they had built everything around. Assumption, compliance, silence. I reached into my bag, not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to interrupt the rhythm of the room. "What's that?" Diane asked, her voice tightening slightly. I placed the envelope on the table. "Centered." "Between all of us. Before anyone goes anywhere," I said, "we need to address something." The room stilled. Not completely, but enough. Olivia paused mid-motion. Ethan looked at the envelope, then at me. Diane's smile didn't disappear, but it changed. "What is this?" she asked. I slid the envelope slightly toward her. "You already opened one of my letters," I said. "I figured this time we'd all read it together." No one moved at first. Then Diane reached for it, slowly, carefully, like she wasn't sure what she was about to find. She opened it, pulled out the first page, and as her eyes moved across the lines, I saw it. That shift, the moment confidence turns into calculation. "This is unnecessary," she said quickly before anyone else could speak. I didn't interrupt. I let her finish reading, because once she saw everything, there would be no way to pretend this was still just family. Diane didn't pass the paper right away. She kept it in her hand, scanning faster now, like she could outrun what it actually said. The room had gone quiet in that uneasy way, everyone pretending not to stare, but no one looking anywhere else. "What is this?" Olivia asked, her coat still half on. Diane didn't answer her. She looked at me instead. "This is excessive, Emery," she said, her voice tight but controlled. There's no need to escalate something like this in front of everyone. I rested my hands lightly on the table. It was already escalated, I said. I'm just making it visible. That was the difference. Private pressure becomes public accountability. Richard leaned forward. Diane? What is it? She hesitated. Just long enough. Then she handed him the first page. He read slower, more carefully. His expression didn't shift dramatically, but his jaw tightened as he moved through the lines. Olivia stepped closer. Can someone just tell me what's going on? It's a notice, I said. From my attorney, Ethan finally spoke. Emery, maybe we should talk about this privately. No, I said, calm but firm. We've had plenty of chances to do that. He stopped, because he knew I was right. I reached into my bag and pulled out the second copy. Since we're all here, I continued, I'll summarize. I placed the document on the table, turning it so everyone could see. This is a formal notice disputing a caregiver agreement that was created under my name without my authorization, I said. It also addresses unauthorized access to my personal email and the use of my identity in financial structuring. Olivia blinked. Wait, what agreement? I met her eyes. The one that lists me as your children's primary caregiver. Her confusion looked real, at least part of it. I didn't. She started, then looked at Diane. I thought that was just paperwork. It is paperwork, Diane cut in quickly. This is being blown out of proportion. I let that sit for a second. Then I opened my folder and slid a printed page across the table. The contract, I said. Richard picked it up. Olivia leaned over his shoulder. Ethan didn't move. This is your signature, Olivia asked, frowning. It looks like it, I said, but I didn't sign it. Diane shook her head. Emery, we discussed this. It was a family arrangement. No, I said, still calm. You discussed it with Ethan. That landed harder than anything else, because it removed the illusion of consensus. I slid another document forward. This is the authentication log, I said. The confirmation came from an email account I no longer use. Ethan finally spoke again, quieter now. Emery, I didn't look at him. The IP address tied to that confirmation, I continued, is from a residential network. Not Seattle, where I was that week. Not my office. Not anywhere I've been. Richard looked up slowly. Where then, he asked. I held his gaze. This area, I said. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Olivia stepped back slightly. Are you saying someone here? I'm not saying, I replied. I'm showing. I slid the next page forward. Travel records, flight confirmations, timestamp comparisons. Everything aligned. Everything clean. Everything impossible to dismiss as coincidence. This proves I wasn't physically present when the contract was executed, I said. Which means the signature was completed without my consent. Diane's composure cracked just slightly. You're turning this into something legal when it doesn't need to be, she said. We were trying to help the family. By using my name, I asked. No one was harmed, she insisted. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You moved money under my identity, I said. You created a legal obligation in my name, and you structured it so I would be penalized if I didn't comply. Olivia's face changed. Wait, money, she asked. I slid the spreadsheet toward her. Her eyes moved quickly across the numbers. That's the caregiver allocation, she said, confused. That's what Mom told me. What did she tell you, I asked. That it was just how things were categorized, Olivia said. That it didn't really affect anything. It affected me, I said. Richard set the papers down slowly. Diane, he said, his voice lower now. Did you set this up? She didn't answer immediately. That hesitation said enough. We were trying to simplify things, she said finally. Make sure everything was covered. At my expense, I replied. Ethan finally stood. This isn't how we should be handling this, he said. Emery, you're making it sound like we did something criminal. I looked at him for the first time since this started. You accessed my email, I said. You confirmed a contract in my name, and you didn't tell me. He opened his mouth, closed it, because there wasn't a version of that sounded better out loud. "This notice," I said, tapping the paper Diane still held, "requires immediate cessation of any representation of me as a caregiver. It also demands that all related documents be withdrawn." "And if we don't?" Diane asked, her voice thinner now. I held her gaze. "Then we proceed formally," I said, "and it won't stay in this room." That was the moment the balance shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. Because for the first time, they weren't the ones setting the terms. Olivia pulled her coat off slowly and sat back down. "I didn't know it was like this," she said quietly. Richard leaned back, looking older than he had 10 minutes ago. Ethan didn't sit down. He just stood there, caught between two sides of something he had helped create. Diane looked at the paper again, then at me. "What do you want?" she asked. The question came out softer now. Not controlling, not certain, just real. And for the first time that night, no one spoke over me. I didn't answer Diane right away. Not because I didn't know what I wanted, but because I wanted them to sit in the silence for a moment without control, without certainty, without the assumption that this would somehow smooth itself over like everything else had. Then I spoke. "I want everything that has my name on it withdrawn." Immediately, I said. "Every document, every filing, every reference." Diane nodded slowly, still holding the paper. "That can be done." "I want written confirmation," I continued. "From your attorney. Not a conversation, not a promise." "That's reasonable," Richard said quietly. I glanced at him, then back at Diane. "And I want a full disclosure," I added. "Every agreement, every financial structure, anything that used my identity, past or present." Diane hesitated again. "Everything?" she asked. "Yes, because if there was one contract, there could be more." She looked at Richard, then at Ethan. Finally, she nodded. "Fine," she said. "We'll provide it." The room stayed still. No one rushed to speak. No one tried to soften it, because there wasn't anything left to soften. I turned to Olivia. "You need to know what's actually been done in your name too," I said. "Not just what you were told." She swallowed and nodded. "I will." Then I looked at Ethan. This part wasn't in any document. This wasn't legal. This was personal. "I trusted you," I said. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear. He didn't defend himself. Didn't interrupt. "I know," he said quietly. "You had access to my account?" "Account," I continued. "You knew how this would look, and you still went along with it." "I thought it was harmless," he said. "I thought it would just make things easier for who I asked." He didn't answer, because now he understood the question and what it actually meant. I picked up my coat slowly. "This isn't something I'm going to argue about tonight," I said. "You'll receive the formal steps through the attorney once I confirm everything has been withdrawn." "You're leaving?" Ethan asked. "Yes." "Can we talk about this?" he said. "Not tonight." Because tonight wasn't about fixing anything. It was about ending something that had been allowed to continue for too long. I walked toward the door, the room still quiet behind me. No one stopped me. Not Diane, not Richard, not Olivia, and not Ethan. Outside, the cold air hit sharper than I expected, but it felt clean. Like stepping out of something I hadn't realized I was still inside. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel. No shaking, no second guessing, just stillness. The next few days moved exactly the way I had set them in motion. Daniel filed the formal dispute. Carter and Bloom responded quickly, faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, I had written confirmation the caregiver agreement was voided. All related documents withdrawn. No further representation of me in any capacity. And an acknowledgement carefully worded but clear that the authorization had been disputed. It wasn't an apology, but it didn't need to be, because it was on record. That mattered more. A week later, I met Ethan one last time. Neutral place, public, no distractions. He looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. "I didn't think it would go this far," he said. "That's the problem," I replied. "You didn't think." He nodded. "I was trying to keep things smooth," he said, "between you and my mom, and in doing that I said you chose a side without telling me." He didn't argue, because he couldn't. We sat there for a moment. Not angry, not loud, just honest. "I need space," I said finally, "to figure out what this looks like moving forward." He nodded again. "I understand." And for the first time, I believed him, because now there was nothing left to hide behind. When I walked away from that table, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like something quieter, more stable, a boundary that had finally been drawn and respected, not because they agreed with it, but because they had no choice. And for me, that was enough. I've thought a lot about what happened since that night. Not just the contract, not just the betrayal, but the pattern that led to it. Sometimes the most dangerous situations don't look like conflict at all. They look like cooperation, like helping, like being the one who keeps everything running smoothly so no one else has to be uncomfortable. Until one day you realize you've been written into a role you never agreed to, and everyone else thinks it's normal. Setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about clarity. It's about deciding where you end and where other people don't get to step in without your permission. And here's something I had to learn the hard way. Forgiveness doesn't mean access. You can understand why someone did something and still decide they don't get to do it again. If you've ever been put in a position where saying no felt like breaking something important, I'd really like to hear your story. Where are you watching from? What time is it for you right now? And if this kind of story resonates with you, quiet strength, real boundaries, and truth that actually holds up, subscribe and stay with me. This is a fictional story created for entertainment, education, and reflection.